her 64th independence. This and many more stories to come your way in a moment. Do stay with us. Rebels in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have consolidated control over the Rubaya coltan mining region, imposing a production tax estimated to generate around $300,000 in monthly revenue, the United Nations Security Council heard on Monday. The M23 movement, a Tutsi-led organization purportedly backed by Rwanda, seized the area, which produces minerals used in smartphones and computers, following intense fighting in April. Bintou Keita, head of the UN mission in Congo, told the Security Council that trade from minerals in the Rubaya area accounts for over 15% of global tantalum supply. Congo is the world's top producer of tantalum, which is considered a critical mineral by the United States and the European Union. The majority of Congo's mineral resources are situated in the east, a region plagued by conflict over land and resources between several armed factions. The situation has deteriorated since the resurgence of the M23 rebellion in March 2022. Thousands have been killed and over 1 million displaced since the resurgence in fighting. Manufacturers are under scrutiny to ensure that metals used in products such as laptops and batteries for electric vehicles are not sourced from conflict zones like Eastern Congo. Keita said that as profits from mining have surged, armed groups have become militarized entrepreneurs, making them stronger both militarily and financially. Barrick Gold Corps and Mali government have decided to find a resolution to existing claims and disputes over the Lolo and Gwankoto gold mines in the West African country, the company said on Monday. The statement from the world's second largest miner comes 2 days after the Malian government arrested 4 Barrick employees. The two parties have been negotiating a new mining contract that proposes to give Mali's military-led authorities greater control over its resources. Mali is one of Africa's biggest gold producers. Barrick said the details of the agreement will be made public once terms of the settlement have been finalized. Shares of Barrick were trading down by 2% on the Toronto Stock Exchange at 2:16 p.m. Eastern Time. Barrick CEO Mark Bristow said in a statement that the current negotiations have proved challenging, but they are encouraging by the government's recognition of the importance of securing the long-term viability of the Laolo-Gwankoto complex as a substantial contributor to the Malian economy. The Mali government was not immediately available for comment. In July, Barrick said it had invested over $10 billion in the Malian economy over the past 29 years. Kenyan lawmakers plan to launch impeachment proceedings against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, accusing him of undermining the government, Parliament's majority leader said, reflecting a widening rift between President William Ruto and his deputy. The move could add to the government's challenges after deadly months-long protests over a disputed finance bill forced Ruto to shelve the legislation in June and fire almost his entire cabinet. Majority Leader Kiman Chung-Wa has signed an impeachment motion against the deputy president, stating he will support it to prevent internal government sabotage, despite calls for Gachagua's spokespeople being unanswered. In recent days, he has spoken of being sidelined and denied accusations linking him and associates to the unrest. calling it a futile attempt to soil his name and hopefully creates grounds for the mooted impeachment proceedings against him. On Sunday, he told reporters that any impeachment motion would require Rutter's assent. Without the president's go-ahead, the motion cannot reach Parliament. If it reaches Parliament, it is the president who has authorized it. Gachagua commands support in Kenya's popular central region, and efforts to unseat him could stir up discontent there, adding to Rutter's headaches. More than 50 people were killed in the unrest against the financing legislation, creating Rutter's biggest crisis since he took office in 2022. Protesters opposed tax hikes contained in the bill and also demand action against misgovernance and corruption. As part of a major reshuffle, Ruto in July nominated 4 members of the main opposition party to a broad-based cabinet. But activists say the new government will perpetuate a tradition of leaders co-opting the opposition instead of carrying out far-reaching reforms demanded by citizens. 4 Tanzanian men, including a soldier and a police officer, were sentenced on Monday to life in prison for gang raping an underage girl in a case that caused national outrage. The 4 were sentenced in magistrate court in the capital, Dodoma. The court also ordered each man to pay 1 million Tanzanian shillings, that is $366, to the rape victim. All 4 had pleaded not guilty to charges of gang rape and sodomy at trial. ATN gathered that the attack took place in August, and a video of the violence was widely circulated online, prompting police to urge the public to stop sharing it so as not to further victimize the 17-year-old girl. Dodoma Police Commander Theopista Maila was transferred after she linked the rape video to sex work. The suspects were charged in court on August 19 after calls from women's rights groups for justice to be served. Local media outlets have reported a surge in gender-based violence in the country. It's the day of the vice presidential debate, and Tim Walz and J.D. Vance are preparing to go head-to-head in New York City. The debates will start at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and like the Harris-Trump debate, it will be held in a studio without an audience. Unlike the main presidential debates, the candidates' microphones will not be muted when it is not their turn to speak, but moderators can mute mics throughout the event. To practice before Tuesday's vice presidential debate, Walz has used Pete Buttigieg, Transportation Secretary and frequent TV News interviewee, as a Vance stand-in. Both Buttigieg and Vance are Ivy Leaguers from the Midwest and roughly the same age. Vance has been preparing for the debates with Minnesota Republican Senator Tom Emmer as a stand-in for Walz. On Monday, Emma gave an insight into how debate practice has been going, telling reporters about portraying Walz. Quotes, "Frankly, it's tough because he is really good on the debate stage." Republicans are seeking to frame Walz, the four-key Minnesota governor, who has proved to be the most popular figure in the presidential race, as a mean-spirited, ogreish figure. Emmer, who ran unsuccessfully for Minnesota governor in 2010, said Walz is going to stand there and he lies with conviction. And he has these little mannerisms where he's just, "Hey, I'm the nice guy," but he's not nice at all. California became the 5th state in the U.S. to ban universities from admitting students based on their family connections, and the 2nd state after Maryland to extend the ban to private, non-profit universities. New state laws aim to address the issues of race in college admissions, focusing on hard work, good grades, and a well-rounded background. The legislation, set to go into effect in September 2025, will affect private non-profit colleges like Stanford and the University of Southern California. The move comes in response to the Supreme Court's decision to bar race from college admissions. California law prohibits admissions offices from favoring applicants whose family members are graduates or significant donors to a school, a practice that often results in a wealthier, less racially diverse student body. Advocacy groups support the bill, calling it a step forward in dismantling unfair admission practices. The U.S. is also facing challenges in prioritizing university admission to students with family connections, with Harvard's admissions process being investigated for discrimination. In a complaint against Harvard, Lawyers for Civil Rights, a non-profit based in Boston, argued that students with legacy ties are up to 7 times more likely to be admitted to Harvard and can make up nearly a third of a class, and that about 70% are white. Some high-status private colleges and universities have announced they are voluntarily ending any admissions priority for legacy students, including Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, Amherst College in Massachusetts, and Wesleyan University in Connecticut. Wealth significantly influences students' admission to elite private colleges, with top 1% families more likely to attend EV+ colleges. California law mandates schools to report alumni connections, leading to a preference for alumni admissions. This trend is expected to improve higher education fairness in California. Some of the busiest ports in the U.S. were braced for crippling disruption after about 45,000 port workers represented by the International Longshoremen's Association, ILA, began walking off the job after their contracts expired at midnight. Talks over new union contracts between the ILA and the United States Maritime Alliance broke down on Monday, and workers began striking at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, with 36 ports along the eastern Gulf Coast affected. Workers began picketing at the port of Philadelphia shortly after midnight, according to reports. Walking in a circle at a rail crossing outside the port and chanting, "No work without a fair contract." The Port of Virginia also confirmed the work stoppage. ATN gathered that the strike, the first by port workers strike on the U.S. East Coast since 1977, threatens to shut down ports from Maine to Texas, mangling supply chains and straining the U.S. economy. Negotiators on both sides of the table have accused the other of refusing to bargain. The ILA has argued that USMX, which represents 40 ocean terminals and port operators, has lowballed offers on wage raises for workers and accused it of violating the previous contracts by introducing automation at several U.S. ports. It is estimated the strike will cost the economy as much as $5 billion a day. The union has said it will still handle military cargo and that passengers' cruise ships will be unaffected. The White House has been monitoring the rifts between the union and USMX, urging both sides to reach an agreement. The AFL-CIO has urged House Republicans against interfering by pushing to impose an injunction to block the strike. Joe Biden said ahead of the strike that he did not plan to interfere to block it. President Joe Biden said on Monday that he plans to tour areas of the southeast damaged by Hurricane Helene when his visit will not interfere with ongoing rescue and recovery operations efforts, all the more scrutinized for taking place in the shadow of a contentious presidential campaign. The trip was announced just days after the devastating storm ripped through much of the South, with the death toll now reaching an estimated 121 across 6 states. North Carolina was hit the hardest, with Buncombe County, which includes the city of Asheville, reporting 30 deaths on Sunday and major power outages. Speaking from the White House on Monday, Biden reassured communities hit hard by the storm that the nation has their back and that help was on the way. He also went ahead to say, "We will continue to serve resources including food, water, communications and life-saving equipment will be there," he said. He said, "I means it, as long as it takes to finish this job," reiterating his intent to visit hurricane-ravaged communities. He noted that he was told it would be disruptive if he did its right now. Biden described the storms to reporters on Sunday as stunning and said his administration is giving states that saw severe damage everything they have to help them recover. As part of the continued response, the White House said Administrator Dean Criswell of the Federal Emergency Management Agency has been tasked with figuring out what can be done to speed up support to communities that are having trouble accessing assistance. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are expected to assess the damage caused by Hurricane Irma, with Harris expected to move to North Carolina on Monday. Biden spent the weekend in Delaware receiving updates from Criswell and Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall. Harris' running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, praised first responders and expressed gratitude to those who helped their neighbors. Former President Donald Trump's Republican running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, expressed heartbreak by the devastation in Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, and Tennessee. Trump is seeking to make the hurricane and the current administration's response an issue on the campaign trail, visiting Valdosta, Georgia, to survey the damage and distribute relief supplies. Trump's criticism comes just 35 days before the November election, and his allies urge him to focus on key issues. The death toll from a devastating storm that battered the southeastern United States climbed to at least 130 on Monday, as the disaster became a hot topic in an already bitter election campaign, with the White House angrily refuting claims it had been slow to respond. President Joe Biden The federal government's response to major natural disaster at the request of states, with the president typically overseeing and coordinating aid, including funding. Climate change is believed to contribute to the rapid intensification of hurricanes due to warmer oceans providing more energy for them to feed on. President Joe Biden emphasized this, stating that climate change is the cause of the destruction left by the storm. In Pinellas County, Florida, 9 people were killed, with most drowned. In Georgia, over 1.6 million households and businesses were without power. Georgia's abortion law, which prohibited abortions beyond 6 weeks of pregnancy, was struck down by Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBoney, citing a violation of Georgia's constitution. The law, which was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2022, allows states to ban abortion at all stages of pregnancy, with Georgia being one of 4. Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr plans to repeal the state Supreme Court's ruling that would allow abortions through at least 20 weeks of pregnancy. The bans have been deeply felt in the South, as many people live hundreds of miles from states where abortion procedures can be obtained legally. Georgia's law, passed by state lawmakers and signed by Republican Governor Brian Kemp in 2019, was initially blocked until the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Georgia's Supreme Court has ruled against Georgia's personal beliefs, overturning the will of Georgians and their representatives. The ruling, criticized by Carol Tobias, president of the National Right to Life Committee, is seen as an activist ignoring higher court rulings. However, Monica Simpsons, executive director of Sister Sang Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective, celebrated the ruling, stating that the work has not been in vain. Georgia's law prohibiting abortions once a detectable human heartbeat is present has been reversed, allowing abortions up until around 20 weeks into a pregnancy. This decision has led to a decrease in monthly abortions in the state, which had previously seen over 4,400 abortions per month. Carafem, an Atlanta abortion provider, plans to expand its services as permitted, but co-founder Melissa Grant fears a reversal. The ruling means the right to privacy in the Georgia Constitution includes the right to make personal health care decisions. The Georgia Supreme Court has ruled that a 6-week ban on abortion is inconsistent consistent with women's rights of liberty and privacy and society's interest in protecting unborn infants. The ruling was criticized by the Georgia Life Alliance Executive Director, Claire Bartlett, who believes the Georgia Supreme Court will overturn McBurney's decision. Georgia has no referendum on abortion rights scheduled for this year, but Democrats have focused on it to appeal to women and suburbanites. Vice President Kamala Harris visited Atlanta to cast Republican Donald Trump as a threat to women's freedom and lives, warning Trump will limit abortion access even more if elected. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to the broadcast of the International News and Atlantic Television Network. Welcome back to the broadcast of the International News and Atlantic Television Networks. We are open for advert placements, bookings, and commercials. And you can connect with us on ATN socials. Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network. Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1. X, formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. And now to the rest of our stories. Jimmy Carter is preparing to celebrate his 100th birthday on Tuesday. The first time an American president has lived a full century, and the latest milestone in life that took the son of a Depression-era farmer to the White House and across the world as a Nobel Peace Prize-winning humanitarian and advocate for democracy. Former Georgia Democrat and 39th President George Washington has lived in home hospice care for the past 19 months. He served one term and led the Carter Center for over 4 decades, aiming to wage peace, fight disease, and build hope. His grandson, Jason Carter, appreciates his 100-year life. Former President George Bush is set to celebrate his 100th birthday in his hometown built in the 1960s. The Carter Center hosted a musical gala in Atlanta on September 17, raising over $1.2 million for the center's programs. The event will be broadcast on Georgia Public Broadcasting. Habitat for Humanity volunteers in St. Paul, Minnesota, is honoring Jimmy Carter by rebuilding 30 houses. Carter, who survived cancer, falls, and hip replacements, entered hospice care at 98. He was last seen publicly a year ago, using a reclining wheelchair to attend his wife's funeral services. He was joined by his 4 children and extended family at Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains. James Earl Carter Jr., the centenarian president, is eager to cast his 2024 presidential ballot for Vice President Kamala Harris, the first woman, second black person, and first person of South Asian descent to reach the Oval Office. The centenarian president, born 4 years after women were granted the constitutional right to vote and 4 decades before black women won ballot access, is gratified by his friend Joe Biden's courageous choice to pass the torch. Early voting in Georgia begins on October 15th, 2 weeks into James Earl Carter Jr.'s 101st year. Nearly 6,000 people in Haiti are starving, with nearly half the country's population of more than 11 million people experiencing crisis levels of hunger or worse as gang violence smothers life in the capital of Port-au-Prince and beyond, according to a new report released on Monday. The number of Haitians facing crisis, emergency, and famine levels of hunger increased by 1.2 million in the past year for a total of 5.4 million as gang violence disrupts the transportation of goods and prevents people from venturing out of their homes to buy food, according to the reports by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification. The 5,636 people who are facing starvation, the worst level, live in makeshift shelter across the metropolitan area, according to the report, which noted that another 2 million Haitians face severe hunger. Villeneuve told newsmen that she also was surprised that some of the 2 million people hit by hunger don't even live in places directly affected by gang violence. While much of the hunger is directly tied to gang violence, double-digit inflation also has limited what many Haitians can afford to buy, with food now representing 70% of total household expenditures. The cost of food baskets increased more than 11% in the past year, with inflation hitting 30% in July. In addition, parts of Haiti are still struggling to recover from the August 2021 earthquake, various drought episodes, and Hurricane Matthew, which struck Haiti as a Category 4 storm in 2016. Gang violence, however, accounts for most of the hunger, with gangs controlling 80% of Port-au-Prince and the roads that led to and from northern and south Haiti, preventing farmers from delivering goods and non-profits from delivering aid. From April to June, at least 1,379 people were reportedly killed or injured and another 428 kidnapped. In addition, gang violence has left more than 700,000 people homeless in recent years. The town of Hilario Ascasubi, near Argentina's eastern Atlantic coast, has a parrot problem. Thousands of the green, yellow, and red birds have invaded, driven by deforestation in the surrounding hills, according to biologists. They bite on the town's electric cables, causing outages, and are driving residents around the bend with an incessant screeching and deposits everywhere of parrots' poo. The hillsides are disappearing, and this is causing them to come closer to the cities to find food, shelter and water. Biologist Diana Lera said, explaining that much of Argentina's forest land has been gradually lost over the years. In the past few years, the parrots have started to arrive, seeking refuge in the town through autumn and winter. At times, according to locals, there are up to 10 parrots for each of the town's 5,000 human inhabitants. During the summer, the birds migrate south to the cliffs of Patagonia for the breeding season. Images show hundreds of bats perched along electric cables and on pylons, or silhouetted in the dusk light swarming over buildings and a church, early reminiscent of scenes in film director Alfred Hitchcock's classic 1963 thriller The Birds. They bite and damage the cables. Water can then get into the wires when it rains and transmission is cut off. These parrots create daily costs and problems for us, said Ramon Alvarez, a local journalist for Radio Taxi FM. It goes without saying that when the power goes out, there is no radio. Residents have tried various methods to scare them away, such as noise and laser lights, but nothing has worked. Mere 3 days after being elected as the new leader of Japan's ruling party, incoming Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has announced plans for a snap election on 27th of October. Ishiba, 67 years old, replaced outgoing Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as chief of the Liberal Democratic Party on Friday, following a tight race that saw him securing more votes than any of the other 8 candidates. Since the LDP has a parliamentary majority, Ishiba will be approved as Prime Minister by Parliament on Tuesday. The election, which is said to take place more than a year before it's due, will decide which party controls Parliament's lower house. Earlier in the day, Ishiba began picking government and party officials who will contest the upcoming general election with him, including 2 influential former prime ministers, Taro Aso as advisor and Yoshihide Suga as vice president. Ishiba, the Japanese leader, has won the leadership election and plans to revitalize Japan's economy, address security threats, and clean up the LDP. He has been criticized for his handling of scandals and internal conflicts, including the influence of the Unification Church within the party and allegations of underreported political funding. These scandals have sparked public outrage and damaged Prime Minister Kishida's political standing, leading to his decision not to seek re-election as LDP leader. The LDP, Japan's most popular political party, is aiming to change its stance in the upcoming presidential election, according to former leader Kishida. He emphasized the importance of transparent elections and free debate. Despite scandals, the party remains the country's most popular. The campaigning for leadership is seen as an audition for the general election. Suga from K-pop boy band BTS has been fined $15 million for driving an electric scooter while intoxicated, according to media reports. The singer, whose real name is Min Young-gi, was indicted in August after police found him trying to get up after falling off the scooter near his Seoul home and discovered he was drunk. His blood alcohol level was 0.227%, far exceeding the 0.08% threshold, say local media reports, quoting police. A district court in Seoul imposed the fine last Friday. The rapper, who also had his license revoked, apologized in August, saying he had driven home in Seoul, thinking it was a close distance, and forgot that they can't use an electric scooter under the influence. Although no one was harmed and no property was damaged, this is entirely his responsibility with no excuses. He went on to say, "I apologize to those who have been hurt by my carelessness and wrongful behavior, and I will ensure that this does not happen again in the future," he said in a statement. Suga faced backlash in the days that followed, with some asking him to leave BTS K-pop idols in South Korea, are generally expected to project a squeaky clean image, though in this case, many of Suga's fans had also rallied in his defense. The 31-year-old is currently serving as a social service agent in the military as he had been ruled unfit for regular combat duty. British Judge Nicholas Phillips has stepped down from Hong Kong's top appeals court, the fourth overseas judge to leave the city's judiciary this year. Foreign Judge Phillips, 86 years old, is leaving Hong Kong's Court of Final Appeal after 22 years for personal reasons. He resigned after his fourth term ended, joining a long line of non-permanent foreign judges. Phillips is the fifth foreign judge to resign this year. In a statement to newsmen, the judiciary said it was grateful to Phillips for his support for the rule of law in Hong Kong. Hong Kong judicial's independence and commitment to upholding the rule of law remain largely affirmed by both serving and departed non-permanent judges, despite recent departures. Two British judges, Jonathan Sumption and Lawrence Collins, resigned due to the political situation in Hong Kong. Canadian Judge Beverly McLachlan also resigned this year, as did Australian Judge Murray Gleeson, who cited his age, 85 years old. Phillips' departure leaves just 6 foreign judges on the CFA benches. 4 Australians and 2 from the UK, Lenny Hoffman and David Newberger, pro-democracy activists and human rights groups, have been calling on those remaining to also quit, saying their presence lends legitimacy to a legal system that has been undermined by the worsening security environment. Sumption argues overseas judges' presence isn't sustaining Hong Kong's rule of law, while Newberger supports the independent judiciary and legal profession, stating they benefit the people and deserve support. Flooding and landslides caused by continuous rainfall have killed at least 101 people in Nepal, while 64 people are missing, officials have said. Nepal's capital, Kathmandu, experienced heavy rain and flooding results in 101 deaths and 64 missing people. The Kathmandu Valley recorded its highest rainfall since 1970, with 240 millimeters of rain in 24 hours to Saturday morning. The death toll is expected to rise. At least 34 of the dead were in Kathmandu, according to Home Ministry spokesperson Rishiram Tiwari on Saturday. He said all divisions of security forces in the country, including the army, have been ordered to help in the rescue efforts. Several roads were blocked by landslides triggered by the rainfall. 3 highways, including the Ki Prithvi Highway connecting Kathmandu to the rest of the country, has been blocked by landslides, and heavy equipment is being used to try to open the roads, said Tiwari. The Nepali government issued flood warnings due to massive rainfall, banning nighttime travel on highways and urging high alertness. Home Minister Ramesh Lekak said the government's priority is rescuing and helping affected people. Kathmandu experienced flooding, forcing residents to move to top floors and causing power and internet outages. The monsoon season typically ends in mid-September. Members of Jamaat-e-Islami clashed with Pakistan's security forces in Karachi on Sunday after they were prevented from marching to the city's U.S. consulate to protest against the Israeli assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader, in Beirut on Friday. Nasrallah, linked by Israel to numerous deadly attacks on Israeli and Jewish targets, had been on Israel's kill list for decades. His assassination is by far the biggest and most consequential of Israel's targeted killings in years and significantly escalates the war in the Middle East. Nicola Gobo, a 25-year-old Victoria barrister, was reportedly targeted by police after dealing with gangland clients like Tony Mogbel. Her lawyer claims she sought a way out and had a friendship. Victoria police accused Gabo of grooming her as a police informant, exploiting her vulnerabilities and position to use her as a source. The killings continued in the early 2000s, leading to a desperate detective approach. Gobo's senior barrister, Tim Tobin Casey, said detectives were desperate and practice protocols were by the wayside. Taylor accused Victoria police of making promises to protect her. Taylor criticized the high-order negligence of Gobo's actions over a significant period, stating that her failure to provide police with an overwhelming amount of information and intelligence led to her being portrayed as controlling, malicious, and manipulative in the past 5 years. Taylor believes the case will focus on the power dynamics between a lonely young woman and the police force, rather than the client's past mistakes, as evidence is expected in the judge-alone civil trial. A gangland barrister claims her safety was compromised by police informer Gobo, and her unmasking damaged her health and career. She will give evidence remotely with Victoria Police delivering their defense case. The Albanese government has announced British-Australian academic Aftab Malik as the special envoy to combat Islamophobia in Australia after months of delays. Anthony Albanese announced the establishment of 2 envoys to address anti-Semitism and Islamophobia during the Gaza war. Lawyer Gillian Segal was announced as the anti-Semitism envoy, but the government announced Malik as the Islamophobia envoy. Earlier on Monday, sources confirmed to newsmen in Australia that Malik was to be appointed, with the news announced at a Muslim community event later in the evening. New South Wales Premier's Department's Malik, a former executive director of the Zaytuna Institute and UN's Alliance of Civilizations global expert on Muslims affairs, has been appointed for a 3-year term. Malik aims to promote social cohesion and combat hate in Australia, and plans to engage the Prime Minister Gillian Segal on community-based solutions. 4 others were considered for the role, including school principal Ali Kadri and community leader Jamal Rafi. Talks stalled due to concerns about representing diverse Muslim communities and criticizing government policy. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke defended freedom of religion. Marine Le Pen and other National Rally chiefs will go on trial on Monday over allegations of embezzling money from the European Parliament through fake jobs. The hearings may overshadow a record performance in July's snap parliamentary poll, which gave the RN 126 seats, potentially swaying Prime Minister Michel Barnier's minority. Marine Le Pen, a French parliamentary candidate, has been accused of hiring assistants who worked for the party outside Parliament, with many unable to describe the daily tasks. The charges include misuse of public funds, which could result in a €1 million fine, 10 years in jail, and a 10-year bar from public office, potentially threatening her chances of claiming the French presidency. The RN has accused the investigation of persecution and political abuse of the justice system, highlighting the party's struggle to maintain its popularity. The RN capitalized on Macron's unpopularity, leading to snap elections and conservative Barnier's minority coalition. If the NFP alliance and RN join forces, Le Pen could potentially overthrow Barnier. Polls show the former protest party, RN, has increasing voter support. Marine Le Pen, former leader of the FN, has denied guilt and said they are not guilty of anything. The RN, which formerly supported the European Union's money, is accused of supporting a centralized system that gained momentum in 2014 due to growing FN ranks in Brussels. Jean-Marie Le Pen, 96 years old, will not appear in court due to health reasons. The party faces allegations of fake jobs and embezzlement of €2.5 million. The RN has already paid back €1 million, but insists it is not an admission of guilt. Valentino's Paris Fashion Week show featured a grand, glittering floor with smashed mirror tiles, a grand house with 500 armchairs, and a smattering of glowing lamps, marking a new era for the brand. Alessandro Michel returns to fashion's top table at Valentino, a brand he led to success with Gucci, which tripled annual revenues to $10 billion during his tenure. His signing as Valentino brings his character energy back to the center of fashion and intensifies the rivalry between Gucci and Valentino. The kooky hippie bearded Michel is an intriguing choice for Valentino, a house founded by Valentino Garavani. Michelle combines Valentino's romance sophistication with Gucci's magpie spirit, incorporating ladylike jackets, crystal nose rings, and romantic tied gowns. Models wear veiled faces and jewel-decorated jewelry, while grown-up handbags are held with chain straps. The collection conjures a sophisticated, voluptuous iconoclasm with an enormous ego but charm, drawing inspiration from Gucci's success. Valentino's designer, Michelle, showcased a collection that combines archival reference from the 1970s and 1960s, creating a unique aesthetic that catches the imagination. The collection features kooky clothes, turbans, polka dot gloves, white lace ties, John Lennon glasses, and tiny ribbon bows. The show was filled with ideas and tricks that will be worn by a larger audience than can afford Valentino price tags. Michel described the collection as an enchantment of the world and expressed his work coming from its gut. British universities are urging the government to restart EU student flow after Brexit, including a possible return to the Erasmus student exchange program. However, they are adopting a watch-and-wait approach, recognizing the toxic Brexit rule over migration and stating that it is not in their interest for the government to intervene. Starmer has softened his resistance to a youth mobility scheme allowing under-30s to return to the EU for working holiday stints, stating there are no plans for such a scheme, but describing the meeting as important. EU sources suggest a meeting between the EU and UK to discuss a work program for defense and security and a possible veterinary agreement. The aim is to work together for 6 months with an EU-UK summit in spring next year. The focus is on youth mobility schemes and the Erasmus student exchange program, which allowed 15,000 British students to study in EU universities before Brexit. In 2020, 17,795 students came to the UK, nearly double the number of British students who went to the EU. Universities UK suggests revisiting the correction mechanism in the Horizon Science Programme deal. Touring the British Replacement Mobility Scheme offers fresh ideas and student exchanges, allowing 4-week placements, summer schooling, and vocational experiences, which could increase student participation among disadvantaged communities. Stern argues that the EU is not requesting any changes to Erasmus and that while youth and students are central to the EU reset, they don't want to be prescriptive or a bargaining chip. As Nigeria marks its 64th Independence Day, it is a fitting time to reflect on the nation's journey and its standing in the global community. Over the past years, Nigeria has evolved from a post-colonial nation to a significant player on the international stage. Its influence extends across various sectors, from politics and economics to culture and sports. Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, has often been referred to as the giant of Africa. This moniker is not without reason. The nation's vast natural resources, particularly its oil reserves, has made it a major economic force on the continent. Its strategic location has also positioned it as a key player in regional and global affairs. Nigeria's cultural influence is undeniable. Its vibrant music scene, particularly Afrobeat and Afrobeats, has captivated audience worldwide. Nollywood, the Nigerian film industry, is one of the largest in the world, producing a wide range of films that showcase the country's rich heritage and diverse stories. Nigeria fashion and cuisine have also gained global recognition, reflecting the nation's unique identity. Despite its many achievements, Nigeria has faced significant challenges, including insecurity, corruption, and economic inequality. These issues have hindered the country's development and progress. However, Nigeria also presents immense opportunities. Its youthful population, which is one of the largest in the world, offers a demographic dividend that can drive economic growth and innovation. Since the 1960s, Nigeria has been a major contributor of troops and police to United Nations peace operations, having served in dozens of missions. Most recently, Nigerian troops were the military backbone of the UN mission in Liberia from 2003 to 2018, helping to restore security throughout a country that had undergone a brutal civil war. Since independence, with Jaja Wachukwu as the First Minister for Foreign Affairs and Commonwealth Relations, later called External Affairs, Nigerian foreign policy has been characterized by a focus on Africa as a regional power and by attachment to several fundamental principles: Africa, unity and independence, capability to exercise hegemonic influence in the region, peaceful settlement of disputes, non-alignment and non-intentional interference in the internal affairs of other nations, and regional economic cooperation and development. In carrying out these principles, Nigeria participates in the African Union, ECOWAS, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Commonwealth of Nations, and the United Nations. Upon gaining independence in 1960, Nigeria quickly committed itself to improving the lives of the people of the country and harnessing the resources that remain vital to the economy of the country and our neighbors by observing at what benefits and appropriates for the country. Nigeria became one of the founding members of the Organization for Africa Unity, which later became the African Union. The Organization for African Unity checks political stability of any African countries and encourages them to be holding regional meetings for the Union. Nigeria backed the African National Congress by taking a committed tough line with regard to the South African government and the military actions in Southern Africa. Nigeria, an Organization for African Unity, now the African Union, has tremendous influence in West African nations and Africa on the whole. Nigeria has additionally funded regional cooperative efforts in West Africa, functioning as standard barrier for ECOWAS and ECOMOG, economic and military organizations respectively. Similarly, when civil war broke out in Angola after the country gained independence from Portugal in 1975, Nigeria mobilized its diplomatic influence in Africa in support of the popular movement for liberation of Angola. That support helped tip the balance in their favor, which led to OAU recognition of the MPLA over the National Union for the Total Independence of Angola. Nigeria extend diplomatic support to another cause, Sam Nujoma's Southwest Africa's People's Organizations in Namibia, to stall the apartheid South African installed government there. In 1977, the new General Olusegun Obasanjo's military regime donated $20 million to the Zimbabwean movement against the apartheid government of Rhodesia. Nigeria also sent military equipment to Mozambique to help the newly independent country suppress the South African-backed Mozambican National Resistance guerrillas. Nigeria also provided some military training at the Kaduna 1st Mechanized Army Division and other material supports to Joshua Nkomo and Robert Mugabe's guerrilla forces during the Zimbabwe War in 1979 against the white minority rule of Prime Minister Land Douglas Smith, which was backed by the apartheid government of South Africa. Due to mismanagement of its economy and technology, Nigeria announced that it was launching a nuclear program of unlimited scope of its own but failed. After the Nigerian independence in 1960, Nigeria demonstrated its seriousness in improving the economy for people and embarked on nationalizing some multinational companies that traded with and broke the economic trade embargo of the apartheid South African regime. The local operations of Barclays Bank was nationalized after the bank ignored the strong protest by the Nigerian populace. Nigeria also nationalized the British Petroleum for supplying oil to South Africa. In 1982, the Alhaji Shehu Shagari government urged the visiting Pontiff Pope John Paul II to grant audience to the leaders of South African guerrilla organizations. And that's it on the international news for today. Before we go, another look at the major stories. UN says Congo rebels generates $300,000 monthly in seized mining area. We told you that Tim Walz and J.D. Vance to face off in vice presidential debate. 30 killed after hurricane swamped one county in North Carolina. 45,000 workers begin strike at U.S. ports after breakdown in union talks. We also told you that hunger reaches famine levels in Haiti. UK government announces fee waiver for foreign nationals. Nigeria celebrates her 64th independence. Thank you so much for watching the international news. I am Victor Peter. Business news comes up next. Do stay with us.